Are you experiencing back pain that you can't get rid of? Getting migraines, vertigo, having trouble sleeping, and/or brain fog? Do you feel like your medical doctor doesn't understand your condition? Blair Chiropractic might be the solution you've been looking for. If you've ever been skeptical about this, the two doctors you're about to listen to were even more skeptical than you were when they looked into chiropractic work. But fear not. Get expert guidance from the blonde and the bald, Doctors Beth Bagley and Frederick Schurger. These two doctors have extensive experience beyond the healthcare realm and bringing unique vision and healing to their patients. What do you have when you get a biological analyst and an engineer together? Find out right here on another episode of The Blonde and the Bald. Welcome your hosts, Doctors Bagley and Schurger.
Welcome, folks, to The Blonde and the Bald. I'm Dr. Frederick Schurger.
I'm Dr. Beth Bagley. How are you doing, Dr. Schurger?
I'm good. It's been a very nice week. Dr. Brooks, who we need to have a bigger podcast with Dr. Brooks and Dr. Shiloh, and like all of us at one time.
Oh gosh, it's going to be mayhem.
That would be fun. And just to
we should get Drew on too, so that he can just.
Oh, that would be just pure chaos. If I end up buying a bunch of equipment, I will pull it down. I will bring it down to Florida for the Blair conference, which we were just talking about in October, and we'll spend the day just recording when we're not at the pool. But any case,
I like the pool.
But
man, have I had a good week? I know you had a good week too. I had an awesome win with one of my brand new patients. She's been dealing with 2 years of radiculopathy and weird sensations in her body. She has not felt good. There was no cause. She didn't have an accident or injury that she remembers. And she's young. She's in her 30s. And her medical team has put her on the gabapentin and all the pills that you put them on for some sort of neuropathy. And I don't even remember what she was diagnosed with. Probably something similar to what we're going to talk about today.
Yep.
And she's got one adjustment. Well, today was second adjustment, but after her first adjustment, she had 0 radiculopathy.
Nice.
And her sinuses immediately opened up. She could breathe better. She was thinking better and clearer. And she had, she almost made me cry because she was so excited about how many changes were happening so rapidly in her body. Now I warned her, I was like, great, but don't go crazy right now because your body's going to fluctuate and it's going to go up and down right now. And I adjusted 3 different things on her the first day she came in. I only had to adjust 1 today, which is great. Yep. And it's when you look at somebody and she's all put together, she's gorgeous, just this young mother looking beautiful, but she was suffering, and you never know just by how somebody looks, how they feel.
Right. And
what's really cool is one of our patients who is a nurse was talking to her other nurse friends at her work. And this nurse friend was more like one of those very I'm a very big skeptic or whatever. This nurse friend told this lady who doesn't even know my patient that she had to come in to see us because the other nurse had helped so much. So it was like a referral, like a secondhand referral, and a life was changed. So all I can tell is people out there, tell people about this upper cervical chiropractic, because you don't know how far out it could go. The ripples on this was 2 ripples away. And this young woman's life is on track again. And it makes my heart so happy. Chiropractic is the best. Okay. I'm off my soapbox.
Well, no, and I've got one as well, because one of my TN cases that we've been discussing a little bit, he was on, I think, 4 gabapentin a day, I think is what he was taking for the TN pain. It wasn't,
and TN, for anybody not listening or before, it's trigeminal neuralgia. It is a nerve that comes out into our face, and it can cause excruciating pain into the face to the point where people call it the suicide disease, unfortunately. Okay, keep going.
But in any case, he was taking 4 gabapentin throughout the day to manage the pain. And I mentioned to him, it's like, hey, I'm not going to tell you not to take it, but if you can delay, because he's like, well, normally I take it about now, but I'm running a little bit behind when I would normally take it. And I told him, if you can just stretch it out opposed to taking it as you had been at, because a lot of people, the gabapentin will have a life cycle, 3 to 4 hours, depending upon what's going on with the individual. And I told him, hey, see if you can stretch it to 5 or 6 hours. And he said he stretched, he didn't need the one at noon the past couple of days.
That's awesome.
So it is. So, again, it's a matter of understanding, if we can get the body working the way it's supposed to. The pain meds are great when you cannot handle the problem anymore.
Yeah.
And there's not another option. And quite honestly, if we can, but nobody talks about the downside to pain meds. We could probably do another podcast. We've talked about some of the pain meds having side effects. But the simple fact that he's able to sort of back off on that, which does two things. One, means he doesn't have to refill that prescription as often, which is good because sometimes, some of these pain stuff you can't get as often as you need it. It's there in case he's having a bad day, but his body is able to function better without it. And I think, he and his wife are both ecstatic about, their results to this point. So, and we're only about 2 weeks in for both of them. So pretty exciting stuff.
It's awesome. It's awesome.
Yeah.
I love it.
And then let's talk about, we're going to get into, tonight's topic, because if you looked at the headline that we're going to put on top, it's going to be Ehlers-Danlos, and you're going to be like, what the heck is that? And we're going to get into to a high level overview, because we can go deep dives, potentially into this, but I just want to sort of hit top level. But anyways, had a new patient who happened to be an Ehlers-Danlos case. She's been having bad migraines, and she had a bad migraine today after her massage. Now, who gets a migraine after their massage? I mean, that's supposed to relax her. She's got the day off. Her kid is at camp till later this evening. She's got time to relax, but no, she can't. And she said normally what she would do is she would take an edible to calm that down. And instead, she said, no, let's see if this is going to take care of the headache. So she comes in, we get her adjusted, and within 30 minutes, the headache is down significantly to something more manageable for her. So that's exciting. But the reason she came in to see me wasn't so much the headache, because she'd been seeing another chiropractor. It was because of Ehlers-Danlos. So let's talk a little bit about that. So let's start with what it is at the basic level. It is a loose ligament syndrome. I'm not going to, I don't remember why it's called, who Ehlers or Danlos were. But, I hate that naming, that, a couple of guys or gals said, I'm going to stick my name to the thing. And now everyone in the medical community has to memorize my name. I'm just like, no.
If we name something like the Bagley sugar disease or
Yeah.
sugar Bagley disease, I think it should have to do something with like the butt. No, I'm just kidding.
Actually, I was told that I should name something for the thermography that we do, because of some way that I'm describing it. And my response was, okay, I'm going to call it the Schurger heuristic integrative technique. Just do the math on that.
Yes, I like it.
Put the letters out there.
I did
to figure out what I just said.
I can spell,
and you'll have fun with that. But again, I don't want to. If we're going to go that direction, I'm going to have fun with it. But no, Ehlers-Danlos is a loose ligament condition. Now, the question is, what's driving it? There seems to be some genetic components that we're finding. It's become much more prevalent
recently.
in practice, really recently.
I never had any of this when I first started practicing 18 years ago.
Yeah, and it's interesting because when we started practicing, fibromyalgia was all the rage.
That was everybody and their sister. I say sister because it's mostly women have that.
Yep.
I feel like EDS is more women than men too. Do you see that?
I do see that. In fact, I can't say that I've seen a whole lot of men who've come in with EDS, but I also contend that if it's not falling off, and we all know what it is with men,
Then they don't
they
care.
won't they won't come in.
So real quick, I'm on the Ehlers-Danlos Society page. I'm just gonna read what they say.
Yeah.
EDS are a group of 13 heritable connective tissue disorders. The conditions are caused by genetic changes that affect connective tissue. Each type of EDS has its own set of features with distinct diagnostic criteria. Some features are seen across all types of EDS, including joint mobility or hypermobility, skin hyperextensibility, and tissue fragility.
Yeah.
And the other thing I saw on the next thing was easy bruising. Looks like it's a part of a lot of them too. Not all of them, part of a lot of them.
Sure. And one of the reasons that we're bringing up fibromyalgia and with the thought of EDS, fibromyalgia 20 to 30 years ago, when it sort of came on the scene, ended up being a garbage diagnosis. And the reason we call it a garbage diagnosis, because if you don't know what it is and you can't figure out what it was, and there's still not a blood test for fibro, you end up saying, oh, well, you sort of fall into this category, and we're just going to, put you over here because we don't know what to call it. And I don't know, the rheumatologist got fibromyalgia in their bag of tricks, and I don't know if they ever figured out what they could do with these people other than help them manage some pain. Chiropractic helped a lot of these people,
yes, it does.
at least to make it more, manageable. With EDS, I feel it's similar. Now there's a number of things that we can probably point to that are that could be driving this, because we've got certainly genetic components that are going on. But why weren't we seeing this a little bit more frequently?
Yes, and
15 years
that's
ago?
such a good question, because we know from our research, not just on this, but genetics only plays a part. You can have a gene, but it doesn't express itself, or stop expressing itself.
Exactly.
When all the time, it's like, it just because you have that gene doesn't mean you're going to get something like breast cancer. You could have the breast cancer gene, and then you're not necessarily going to get breast cancer. Your percentage is higher, but what can you do to stop that? So many people are cutting their breasts off because they have this gene, which doesn't always mean you're going to get breast cancer.
Right.
So I look at this stuff too, and I think of it kind of the same way as, what are we doing to ourselves that are causing these genes to express or not express?
Exactly. And one of the interesting things when we get right down to it is, they said there are 13 different diseases, but I understand, if I'm not mistaken, I thought it was only 4 types.
There are, it's a spectrum.
Yeah. Of course.
Each type of EDS has its own combination of signs and symptoms. Some signs and symptoms are common in multiple types of EDS, while others are only associated with one specific type. So there's there's 3. There's C-EDS, V-EDS, and K-EDS.
Okay.
Also my favorite type of shoe, Keds.
Yeah, let's not go into those 3 because I feel like that's the longer, deeper thing. I know.
Well, I know, but if somebody has it, like, at least you could go on the EDS, and it actually lists out on their front page what types of collagen, and all of that stuff.
But to my point is, I think 1 or 2 of those are that they've identified the genetic marker directly. Not all 3 of them. And like I said, I thought there was a 4th.
There might be. Hold on, I'm looking at it here. May have been just a very basic thing, because HEDS is hypermobile, CEDS is classical, V is vascular, P is periodontal,
which is dental, which makes,
and then oh my goodness, here's one I've never heard of: kyphoscoliotic EDS, KEDS. That's what the KEDS was.
Interesting.
And congenital hypotonia, congenital early onset kyphoscoliosis.
Yeah. So there's
there's
all sorts of interesting stuff going on there for sure. And it makes sense because the underlying tissue that is being affected more than anything else is collagen. It is your connective
100%.
tissue all the way throughout your body. And That's really, again, there are some genetic components to this. This is why like there are 4 types that stick in my brain
Yeah.
from what I've
They say
gone
the
through.
most common, which accounts for 90% of EDS cases, is hypermobile EDS.
Right, right. And one of the, but in general with these, some of them can be characterized as a genetic component directly,
Mhm.
and some of them can't. The hypermobile one, I believe, does not require
A genetic component.
a genetic component. And it is
And I know a lot of people are getting diagnosed with this without any genetic testing being done.
Right, right. And even when they get the genetic testing done, they're not getting an answer, but this is where the hypermobile one comes in especially. I'd be more concerned about a genetic component with the atherosclerotic, or not atherosclerotic, the what's the word I'm looking for? The vascular
The
component.
vascular, yeah.
That component certainly is a problem. But all of it comes down to you're not laying down good collagen. We are born with the strongest collagen in our body is type 1 collagen, which are super strong structures. And this is something we discuss all the time when we're looking at joint biomechanics. Any sort of slip, fall, bump, bruise, injury can cause a tear in our joints. Maybe not a severe tear, maybe it's a grade 1 tear and it's just a sort of discombobulated, as it were, but it's going to be replaced by grade 3 collagen, which has a problem because it's not strong. It's the weakest in the body. It's putting OSB up when you had plywood and you had really good plywood. So it takes time to refix that, and it's effectively a scar tissue to some degree, or it's just not the right material to be strong. The question is why is it laying down, and why is it without necessarily any new trauma is it breaking down? And a lot of people, if you've not heard of collagen proteins and you are listening to a health related podcast, I am surprised if this is the first time. Welcome. Collagen proteins exist and they are wonderful. But one of the problems that they've found is collagen proteins, like good healthy collagen, is not helping these people build stronger connective tissue. So this is where what other components are falling into the mix, because when we start looking at things that might be affecting people to this nth degree that has created this boom of EDS, we as a society do not eat the soups that we would have eaten or the whole animal that we would have eaten that might have components of that connective tissue as part of our normal dietary consumption. So that's a big problem right off the bat. And then the other thing that might be a problem is the main component of collagen is something called glycogen, or not glycogen, glycine. And this is a very interesting amino acid. If you wanted to use it, I think we've talked about this in the past, it is a 1-to-1 replacement for sugar. It's very expensive. It is actually insulin reducing. So all sorts of benefits if you use glycine in place of sugar. And it's when you're eating a piece of meat, all that tastiness is really, that sweetness in the meat is the glycine that you are tasting. This is why brisket has that just, what we're doing with brisket is we're low and slow cooking it until all of that collagen turns into effectively meat jello, and it's tasty, tasty, tasty. So the question comes down to, again, what is breaking down? Glycine is the most abundant amino acid in collagen, and there is a very, very close chemical neighbor to glycine. Guess what it is?
I know.
Yes, I know you know. You can say it because I've talked too much here.
So it's Roundup. So also called glyphosate, right? Yes. We're saying so many gly words, I'm going to forget it. So that is a chemical they use to kill off if you don't know, it's what they kill off weeds with
Mhm.
and unwanted plants. And Monsanto was a company that I used to work for
Mhm.
that promoted it for many years and said it was totally inert and it just breaks down in the soil and it doesn't hurt anyone. Well, come to find out, when you put it on food and you're eating the food, it's in the food.
Mhm.
And if you're
And
spraying it all over the place and it's getting into groundwater and it's getting everywhere. And we did not have as many of these diseases. We did not have so many people have celiac disease and so many autoimmune diseases until this stuff became rampant in our food
Yep.
supply. It is getting better though. We have more places to go and to get food that doesn't have it in there. But right now, pretty much all of us have it in our
Right.
bloodstream.
Yeah, it is rampant. And one of the interesting things, and I'd like to know when they started to, because what they do with wheat is they'll spray it with a second round to help dry it out and keep it, because glyphosate is not just a weed killer, but it is a antimicrobial. So it'll kill mold, it'll kill bacteria.
It'll kill humans.
It'll kill humans. And unfortunately, if they just spray it on the plant early on, and then the plant grows and they did nothing more, it's probably okay because it has probably gotten off the plant. Now, we won't talk about how it binds up magnesium in the soil.
Yeah, we kind of went
because
over that in other ones.
we've covered that, but it does. But I think it's the later, because what's curious about so many people with celiac, when they go overseas, they can have all the bread they want overseas because of whatever European standards are. They are not allowing glyphosate to be used.
And it's also possible that the wheat is different there.
It is.
Because they might have more traditional wheat and we have just the highest starch sugar wheat
Right.
that can be grown.
Well, and we also have Roundup Ready wheat, which is going to be, which is supposedly not, it doesn't have any Roundup in it, but it's sort
No.
of, is
it's resistant to Roundup.
it's resistant.
So you can spray it with all the Roundup you want and it's not going to die.
Right.
So that's what any Roundup resistant crop would be, is it can get sprayed with that chemical and it doesn't die, but everything around it dies.
Right.
So which is good. Farmers love that because then their crop is pure corn or pure
Right.
soybean or like it's pretty much that's what's in there.
Right.
But the big problem is, what is it doing to that food?
Yeah, because downstream it will be food for something,
whether it's a cow
or us.
Yeah, us.
Yeah. So anyways, there are so many questions about if you have this, and if you're just spraying your weeds, that can be enough exposure. I bought a bunch of in order to kill the weeds around my house, I said I'm going to get some high octane vinegar at 45% purity, and oh boy, does that stuff work.
Yeah, they sell that at Lowe's or Home Depot. I can't remember where I bought it. So you can get it. You can get it in a mainstream thing, but it makes your eyes water a little bit when you're spraying it because it smells like vinegar.
It's strong vinegar. It is very strong vinegar. I'm like, oh, I need to be downwind from this.
Yeah, it does work though, y'all.
Yeah,
I mean,
no,
it absolutely works, and it's totally, you could drink it, burn your esophagus while you're drinking because it's 24% or whatever percent it is. But man, does it work. Like within an hour, the plants are like droopy. And then 2 days later, they've turned brown. So, but again, you wouldn't want to spray it on something you're about to eat because it's vinegar, unless it's like a salad. Throw a little oil, vinegar.
Just dilute it a lot if it's 25 or 45%.
Yeah, because they probably, again, burn your mouth a little bit.
Yeah. But again, there are alternatives to it. But even if, what is curious is, what is the safety recommendations for wearing, for spraying that stuff? And ultimately, most people are not wearing that. I mean, I have seen stuff that suggests that it's a full hazmat suit. when you go
I
out and
know.
spray
You
that.
see the people that are even still to this day using it in like lawn maintenance companies
Right.
and things. They're not wearing respirators. They're
No.
just spraying it around, and there's all these lawsuits right now.
Right.
And
And
again,
some people are winning against Monsanto Bayer for those
yeah.
lawsuits. So
And I don't think of these companies as inherently evil.
no.
Their goal is profits, right?
Yep.
And I don't think of the people that work for those companies as inherently evil. Some of them are still my very good friends. It's just that corporations, it's this plausible deniability where like I'm not going to tell this hand what this hand is doing.
Right.
And oh, this came out, but let's not say that. You don't know what you don't know.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
And now it's coming out because, during discovery in these lawsuits, it comes out that, yeah, lots of things were known.
Yeah, exactly. And the question will come down to how much is glyphosate, is the glycerin part of that molecule interfering with collagen protein, collagen production, and how's it breaking down? So
And the other issue is this is probably happening to a lot of these people in childhood.
Exactly.
And or even in the womb as
Mm-hmm.
they're being grown by their mamas,
Yeah.
because the collagen's being laid down incorrectly.
Right.
So yes, there's maybe a genetic component, but I definitely think there's an environmental component, and it might not just be Roundup. It might be other things too,
Right.
because there's all sorts of things that have been injected and done in the last few years too, that could be changed, that could be changing the way people's bodies are working and the
Exactly.
way moms' bodies are working when they're building their children.
Yep. But as to things that people can do with EDS that are going to be a step in the right direction, again, collagen protein by itself might not be enough. I take, if you read most of the collagen proteins, it's like, well, 2 tablespoons. That's probably just a good start. I will throw probably about not quite a half cup of collagen protein into my coffee at lunch, just to have a little bit of an extra boost. What was
And there is so collagen protein, just for a real aside, it'll say, like, if you're looking at it, it'll say there's 0% protein in it. And the reason is because it's an incomplete protein. It's missing one of the essential mediated acids. I can't remember it's tryptophan.
Okay.
And it's missing that. So then it can't be considered like an egg protein is a complete.
Right.
But it's still a protein, y'all. It still has calories. And it is still going to help you build your body, but you just can't live on collagen alone. So that's what I want everybody to know, is when they're like, well, it's 0% protein. No, it's 20 grams of protein. And I got a fourth a cup that I throw into my tea.
But if I'm tracking my macros for protein, collagen is not on my radar. Collagen is extra.
I track it.
You can track it, but I don't include it because I'm gonna throw that in there, and I'm more worried about my complete proteins than anything else. But what's interesting, and this is something that James D. Nicolantonio and Seamland wrote in their book, The Collagen Cure, that it's not just the collagen that you need, but you need the glycine. And most people, glycine is not considered an essential amino acid because we make about 3 grams of it a day in our body. The problem is we need 15. And this is where it keeps coming back around to saying, oh, we need more. Well, here's the kicker. It might not be 15. For you and I, we're doing fine. Our connective
we don't have EDS.
Fine. We don't have EDS. We're strong. We can go into the gym. We don't cry too much 3 days after with DOMS. Well, maybe this is where you may need to add some glycine to the
mix.
And
I have it, and I just haven't been adding it to my tea with so what I could do is what you're saying is I could throw my collagen powder in my tea.
Yes.
And then I'll throw, instead of using stevia, because I do use that in my tea because I like me some sweet tea.
Sure.
I put in the glycine. A tablespoon. How many do you know how many gram or how many grams that would be around a tablespoon?
I think a half. That's going to be close to 6 grams, because what I've played
Okay,
around.
so that will at least give me quite a boost in what I would
Yeah,
normally have.
exactly.
Okay.
And what I find curious, both with for my workout routines and me being wanting to push an envelope that I probably shouldn't all the time. If I'm starting to feel achy, I push the collagen. And if I'm starting to feel lethargic, I push more eggs.
Okay.
So, but what's curious is what Seamland and James D. Nicolantonio have figured out, and these guys, Seam is a genius in the longevity space, and he's been just diving down into this for better part of a decade now. I've got some of his first books. Collagen Cure was one of his newer books. SIIM Land, LAND. And then James D. Nicolantonio, I think he's a research PhD who has been looking at all of these things as far as what to eat, what is healthy, really good science. So if you want references, but what they're suggesting is you don't need, some people need like 6 grams extra, just straight glycine to get all the processes to work the way they're supposed to. But some people might need up to 50 grams of glycine to get those processes to work, which is a lot. I mean,
Yeah.
what I'm saying is, so if I throw a half tablespoon of glycine in my coffee, I can taste it. It's sweet, maybe sweeter than I want.
It is. I feel like I need to take it separate a little bit or something.
Right. So you might need to work up to it. Now, there is another combination of 2 products that are really good for for helping your inflammation and your overall body process. And it's something called GlyNac. And what that is a ratio of glycine and NAC. But the more that I ran the numbers, the more I'm going to tell you, just go with a 1-to-1 ratio of both. And for the average 180 to 200 pound individual, 6 grams of both of those is where you want to be. And if you mix glycine with NAC, which is what it is, and I've got an NAC powder at home and I got a glycine powder at home, it really tempers it, because NAC is really, really
It's not NAD. You're saying NAC.
No, NAC, N-acetylcysteine,
Cysteine. Okay.
right? NAC is, a precursor to glutathione, right? Which you're going to need if you have EDS, because you need something to help sort of clean up the junk. It is your natural vitamin C. It is your equivalent to your natural vitamin C. It's your natural antioxidant. The best way to boost that is glycine and NAC. So a 1-to-1 ratio is going to be the sweet spot for most people. Again, Seam I believe it's in his book, in their book Collagen Cure. It's been a while since I figured out the math and ran the numbers. A couple of other people have talked about this, but that is the most, as far as how do you use those 2 pieces together, that's the way to do it, and that's the most researched. And again, the 2 together in a glass of water goes down pretty easy, because the glycine acts as a spoonful of sugar for the medicine to go down.
So I just had a thought process that
Yes.
while you were talking, and I half listened to you.
That's not normal.
So my father was had the propensity for stretch marks on his skin, very much so. I also get stretch marks very easily, and so do my twins. I know that's a collagen problem. I don't think it's EDS necessarily, because we really don't have hypermobile joints to an extent. I don't have hyperelastic skin. I don't think so. What is that? Does that look? No. So, but there definitely is a collagen issue there, because you shouldn't get stretch marks just on, just as normal growth happens. Now with babies and stuff, almost everyone does, but some people don't, right? And some people have that elasticity.
And that's where there's a vitamin E component that, you'd have to take a look at, because that might be a vitamin E deficiency. But certainly adding the collagen in is going to be a good start, because again,
That's what I'm
100
thinking is like, I never took that when I was, collagen
Right.
wasn't really a thing even 10 years ago. People
No, it
weren't
really
talking about
wasn't.
it much.
It was just coming in. Well, I take collagen was
Okay,
around
15 years ago.
It was, see, this is where Great Lakes Collagen has been around for like 30 or 40 years. And they've been around and ahead of this because they were using collagen and other stuff, but we weren't realizing we should be taking it direct. But again, what we've done in our society is we've moved away from using the whole animal,
Yes.
and we've stopped having, when you make a soup, when you make a bone
Mhm.
broth, you take all the bones
And throw
from
them
the
in.
animal you process and you throw them in with all the meat scraps that were on top of that you can't get to, or they were too tough, or who knows what it was. And you created this broth and you would boil it. Now you wouldn't,
Yes.
well, you'd bring it up to a light
A
simmer,
simmer. Yeah.
and then you'd keep it there for an extended period of time. There is I don't know if there's
Or
still,
you put it in your Instapot and it's done in 90 minutes.
well, there is that. There is, the recipes that I go with are from a book called Brodo, Brodo.
Mhm.
And the guy who, this is where I was introduced to bone broths, was a gentleman who owned a restaurant in New York City. He had one small door that opened directly to what's Times Square or something like that. But it wasn't a usable door for anything else. It wasn't, it was access to the kitchen. But what they figured out is he started making bone broths. He did some stuff because he was like 350 pounds, and he started just drinking pure bone broth. And that helped him lose, 150 plus pounds,
Mhm.
as well as getting him healthy. That changed his life significantly because you've got all that collagen, you've got that glycine, probably some more whole proteins from the meat that, and the meat broth that would come out of that. So that changed his life, and he started selling basically all his bone broths in a little cup to go, so you could have something hot and warm to drink that wasn't coffee, that wasn't tea.
And it had a whole bunch of nutrients in it.
And it was very healthy for you. I don't know, like I said, I don't know if that place is still around. Restaurants turn over a lot, but Brodo is the book, and it's a beautiful little book. It's like a coffee table book that you want, and it's got simple recipes to make it. And what they would do is they'd have the thing basically running all night long, and they'd be selling it and they'd be running through it fast. And that's just what you got to do. You take about a day, maybe two, to really get all of that stuff. And then if you're not drinking it, you can store it. Number of different ways to do that.
I typically freeze my bone broth
Yeah.
so that I can use it for recipes.
Right.
So here's my trick, and it's not the healthiest trick, but for those listening who are just kind of starting off in their journey, something you can do, because ideally in the perfect world, we'd want to use like grass-fed or pastured animals to make our bone broth. 100%. I am not in a position in my life that I am going to go kill chickens on my farm, and I don't have a farm, right? Like, and could I go out and find the chicken? I could, but this is what I do in case you're listening and you're like, how do I even get a bone broth? Is at Costco or Sam's Club, I get rotisserie chickens occasionally because it's quick, easy protein. It's maybe not the healthiest protein. You can fight me. I get it. But, and I use my chicken off there, and then I take the carcass and I put it in a Ziploc bag and I throw it in the freezer. And when I get 2 or 3 of those, depending on how big they are, that's when I make my bone broth. And then I add some vegetables and I usually don't do the seasonings till afterwards.
Right.
Vegetable, like I'll do some celery stalks that were the inside part and some scraps of some vegetables just for some flavoring in there. And I throw it all in my Instapot, fill it up with water, and put it on for, like 90 minutes. And it makes the most beautiful collagen rich, gelatin rich bone broth, because how you know it is the difference between a bone broth and an actual chicken stock is when it's cold, bone broth it turns into gelatin.
Exactly.
It gets like gooey.
Solid.
And it's amazing.
It's lovely. It is so tasty.
When you add salt. It's not tasty until you add salt.
Yeah, you do need to add some salt to it. And my dogs look at me when I give them the stuff from the store, and they're like, this isn't the good stuff. And I'm like, I know.
Yeah.
In fact, I might have to make a small batch up because I probably got a couple bags of bones
Yeah.
from all my steaks and whatnot. So
And that's a great idea too. When you're eating
yeah,
bone-in steaks, just keep the bones, throw
yep.
them in the freezer, throw them in the freezer. And then when you have enough, you can make a bone broth out of it.
I just got noticed that my half of cow is going into get butchered. So yeah. And that's the other thing you
Nice.
can do is you can call local butchers and say, hey, I would like 10 pounds of soup
Bones.
bones. And you want soup bones and you want marrow bones.
Yeah.
Because oftentimes they'll just, these, unless you got somebody who knows what to do with marrow bones, most people don't, they will end up just basically, they're going to get sold for something else. You can get them relatively inexpensive. They don't have to be organic, grass finished. Beef, we've talked about this in the past. Cows in general are probably, because they still have to be on silage through their entire life cycle. They'll get some corn at the end in conventional feedlots, but it's not a lot of corn.
Yeah.
And it's not more than not, and you're still going to get a lot of good nutrition out of conventional beef. But this is something really easy. I've heard so many people, once you start getting them on a bone broth, you can do that. You go to the Chinese uh not buffet, the Chinese grocery store. The Chinese grocery store, if you want to make a chicken broth, and one of the things that is super available are chicken feet, and
Oh,
they're
yeah.
loaded with collagen.
Yeah, they are.
So it looks weird in the pot
It
after
sure
it
does. It's
comes
kind of
up,
freaky. It's
but
freaky.
it's your own magical spell for your health. So
And that and bone broth, obviously, we're talking about EDS and how we can
right,
support people with EDS, but bone broth is also super supported with people who have digestive issues,
yes,
people with leaky gut and just damage to their gut. Anyone, honestly, anyone with digestive issues should just start drinking bone broth on
yep,
a regular basis. And it's such a it
it's
doesn't
easy.
sound easy, but it is easy. We're just
It
so used to not making our own things that we
right.
don't. But
It
bone
and
broth is easy.
Well, because one, like you said, Instapots are readily available.
It makes it faster.
It
But you could,
does.
if you don't have an Instant Pot, just put it on. You can put it overnight on, just
It-
carefully.
well, if you've got electric stoves
Yeah, I don't.
overnight, I have in fact, I broke down and got a fancy setup where I've got a induction heater
Mhm.
and I had to buy a new pot for the induction heater, but that works great because there's no flame.
Yeah.
And there's technically, it doesn't even get hot except for the pot itself.
And I
So,
typically use my Instapot outside, not because I'm afraid of it, but because I don't like how my house smells like soup for 4 days after I let all the steam out.
yeah,
So, so you can use, I just use it on my porch and just set it
yeah,
up and
yeah,
next to the outlet, and it's outside for,
yeah,
90, it's like a couple hours because
right.
it takes time for it to come up to heat.
Right. So let's end up because we could go on and on about that, but I think that's enough.
I think everybody likes our recipes. Let's
I
talk about
do,
our, okay.
but I want to end with let's talk about chiropractic care for EDS cases, because one of the reasons this young lady came in, because she's having all these neck problems, she didn't feel comfortable with the chiropractor she was seeing, who was just a regular guy, and he's a good guy from everything I can hear, but she wasn't comfortable with a traditional chiropractic adjustment for the neck for her, because apparently there are some cases, especially when we were talking about that vascular problem, vascular EDS problems, that
Mhm.
about one a year they have a problem. Now, I want to back up. I don't know if that's the case or not truly, because we're dealing with an interesting population that have EDS. The EDS cases,
Mhm.
generally we're seeing them in mid to late childbearing years. So
Yes.
anywhere from about 25 to, let's call it early 40s.
Mhm.
There are two problems with this group. Women in this group, women in that age group already have some other problems with what they call dissecting arteries. And they, because of birth control, and
Yeah.
because if they've had a child and maybe they're carrying a little bit of extra weight, that automatically puts them at risk. We're not talking about women who are vastly overweight. We're not talking about, well, we are talking about some of these more petite young ladies, but they're carrying just a little bit of extra belly fat. That is enough to cause some problems where these dissecting arteries, and like a dissecting aneurysm, can present without chiropractic care, without any other presentation, and it might be a very bad migraine that you're experiencing. And if you go into the ER and they look at you and they say, hey, there's nothing wrong with you, you're not having a stroke, you're not having this or that, it behooves you to find a good upper cervical chiropractor. And I'd be more than happy to sort of review cases that fall into this if you hear this and you're like, hey, that's me. Because I had one of these cases, and she came in because she was having some of the worst headaches she has ever had. Her friend said, no, go see Schurger because he deals with this kind of stuff all the time. She comes in to see me. I finally, I get all the stuff back. And this was this was within 3 days. She had on Saturday or Sunday, Saturday or Sunday, she'd gotten a CAT scan of her neck to see if there was any sort of problems with some of the arteries. I think it was a head and neck. I get the results Tuesday, right before I'm running over to Arthur. So that's a 90-minute drive for me. We're running around. I read what it is, and I call up the radiologist who I've got a decent relationship with him. We've chatted a couple of times, and I asked him the question, will this show this sort of dissecting aneurysm based upon what they did? And he said, oh no, that would definitely not show up. Because once I saw what was going on, they were missing something. So she needed an MRA or some sort of CT angiogram where they're actually looking at the arteries. And I was just trying to get her because I know how the ERs are, and you go in and you're saying, hey, I think I've got a problem. I need this. And it's a 4-hour wait. Well, the good news is it wasn't, at her ER, it was not a 4-hour wait.
Thank goodness.
So I call her, I'm supposed to adjust her on Wednesday. And I'm trying to make sure I've got a green light from all of her medical background that I'm not going to cause something worse for her. Again, this is not an EDS case. This is just a case of a migraine that ended up being a dissecting aneurysm. She ends up going in, and she goes to the ER. Her doctor basically said, her primary said, no, just go to the ER. They can order that for you. She gets the right test, and she's sort of like, man, I don't know, that they're giving me the runaround. About 5:30, she gives me a call, and I remember I had a chance to pick it up because I had a free moment. She is in tears as they are taking her over to Springfield to the hospital because they did find something, and she's just tears of gratitude, really, because if everything turned out okay, she was fine. But they did find a small aneurysm. They didn't have to do any surgery. It was a watch and wait type situation. But they needed to keep her overnight for a couple of days. So this group of people, this group of women, again, we're talking about 25 to about 45 or somewhere in there, childbearing years. You might be on birth control, and now you have this potential, and carrying a little bit of extra weight. This is where you might have these problems. And who else falls into this category? The EDS cases.
So here's a question. If they would have gone to a conventional chiropractor,
who knows,
and gotten a rotary adjustment, which is a head to the side and a pop, you've all seen them online and stuff. This could have been an extreme tear, possibly.
It could
Obviously,
have been.
we don't know, but it could have been.
This was a mother of 2 young children. It could have been really bad.
That's really scary.
It really is. And it's just, again, we do our due diligence to ask the questions, could this be a bigger problem? We also do an adjusting technique that does not involve taking a person to their end range of motion.
No, there's no
That
twisting or bending.
that kind of chiropractic is very safe. This is the good news. But as I've stated before with my made up statistic, chiropractic works, the general chiropractic works for 80% of the population, but 20% of us need something a little bit more specific and gentle. And that's what we do here in our offices. Shoot, that's why you guys came up. You came up and
last
Dr.
week.
Shiloh came up this past weekend for a seminar. You know, technically I'd had people from as far as Northern Canada in that seminar. So, and I had brisket. So we had collagen.
I'm going to have to say one thing on the podcast is he's been hyping up this brisket, that his smoked brisket is really good. And I didn't believe him, but I'm going to let you guys know it was the best brisket I've ever had in my entire life.
And now she's going to buy a smoker.
I'm going to, and my mouth, I'm
recipe.
speaking about it and my mouth is watering thinking about it again.
And the crazy thing is you've got Dally's right across the street from you.
It's not as good. No,
it's not as good.
Yours is way better. And oh, it was so good. Anyway, so yes, that was the best brisket I've ever had in my entire life.
I'm very pleased with how it keeps on coming out well. But in any case, so that, you know, if that is a concern, back to the chiropractic side of things.
Oh, let's talk about brisket again.
I know we could
no, but you're so right. The type of adjusting we do, when people are like, I'm worried about stroke or something like that, I was like, I'm also concerned about that. I absolutely am. And that's one of the reasons we do this technique.
Yes.
This technique does not involve stretching the vertebral artery to a point where, because I'm just by turning my head right now, I'm stretching the vertebral artery. It is stretching.
It's designed to be stretched. It's designed when we turn our head left or right, it has extra material to allow that give. But, you know, there are conditions and there are circumstances, and who knows what it is. Is it the food we're eating? Is it lifestyle? Is it the extra weight that's causing inflammation? Who knows? There are so many factors to say, is it one thing? But if we can create an intervention that is easier on the patient, that does not require pushing things to a limit, I think that's, you know, that's better for those cases that especially are concerned about it. And with an EDS case, the beautiful thing about how we adjust is we don't push the ligaments. We're just trying to guide the joint back into its proper position so that the ligaments can start healing the way they're supposed to. So we don't want to over adjust. And that's the other nice thing is we don't adjust every visit for these cases.
Only when you need it.
Only when you need it.
And EDS cases do fabulous under Blair Care. I've had multiple women. It's always women. I know there's going to be a man listening saying, "What about me?" And I was like, "I know you exist.
Get in here."
I have not had you as a patient yet.
Yeah, and I haven't either. And I've over the years I've met one man with fibromyalgia.
I think me too.
Yeah, and it's it might be the same guy.
It could be.
You know, that would be. Do we have two or do we have one? But you know, in reality, you know, I more women who've had this. Again, for guys, it's not falling off, so they're not having a problem with it. I'm starting to see more of my 50s and 60s folks coming in because they're like, "Doc, I can't push myself in the gym anymore." I'm like, "That's because you've been broken for 20 years, and we got to fix you now and back you up." Any case. But I think, you know, for people with EDS who are listening, I would definitely take a hard look down the collagen rabbit hole. In fact, I can guarantee that 2 of my EDS cases, 3 of my EDS cases, my big 3, the ones who I've, you know, been dealing with for the better part of a decade or more now, they don't do enough protein.
Yeah.
And they are not getting enough, certainly collagen in this form. So it begs a question, they're like, well, I'm more on this pescatarian diet. I don't have an appetite. It's like, maybe the problem is we got to, we've just got to just do bone broth. I don't care if it's chicken bone broth. I don't care if it's beef bone broth. Find a bone, a bone broth you like, and just make it. Marianne Rudick. I don't know if we've talked about her in the past. Marianne Rudick. She's been on many podcasts, so you could look her up. But Marianne Rudick, in her early college years, was so sick that she was like, she goes to college and then she can't go to college, so she's got to live in her mother's house upstairs. And the only thing that she could tolerate for a year was chicken broth, and that's all she had. But that's all she would eat, because once she started noticing that the chicken broth was helping her, she would, do one, maybe two. She wouldn't want anything else but chicken broth. And it took her a year before she said, "Oh, let's try beef broth." And, all of a sudden everything, blew up for her as far as being better, being stronger. She, you listen to her on her podcast without seeing her picture, and you're like, wow, this is a powerful young woman who has a goal to tell people that animal-based proteins are not the devil that we were taught they were, as well as how to revitalize your health. Don't know if she had EDS, but certainly she was not healing and not functioning the way she's supposed to. So, any case, just a couple of ideas. And if you've got EDS and you're like, I feel like I got something stuck in my skull, it'd be a good idea to give one of us a call, or, find out where we've got a Blair chiropractor near you to help you out. So, Dr. Bagley, where are they going to find you at?
I am in St. Louis, Missouri. We're on the west side. You can find me at precisionchiropracticstl.com. I'm on all the socials at Dr. Beth Bagley.
Awesome. I'm at Keystone Chiropractic, KeystoneChiro.com, KeystoneChiroSPI.com, and on all the socials. Like, subscribe, tell people about this, share this episode with a friend, because you never know how that secondhand person who's going to hear this is going to say, hey,
the ripple.
I know somebody who needs some help. And as we do this, we help people get better. So, any case, folks, thanks for listening. We'll be back next week with another episode of The Blonde and the Bald.
That's all for today's episode of The Blonde and the Bald. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. If you enjoyed today's show with Drs. Bagley and Schurger, remember, don't give up and just live with the pain. Come back next week and get more answers and solutions. Visit our websites at KeystoneChiroSPI.com and PrecisionChiropracticSTL.com for more info, and catch all the episodes of The Blonde and the Bald.